Let's Welcome to Breaking the Silence. We are extremely fortunate to have Whitley here tonight with us and considering the new book that just came out, The Fourth Mind. But I want to start by saying I don't think we'd all be here tonight the way we are in the community that's formed and all the communities that have formed around this subject matter, around this experience with the visitors, if it hadn't been for communion. And that was the book that really brought this all to a head and connected people all over the world with the fact that each one of them probably thought they were crazy or experienced something that no one else had and that they were keeping to themselves. And they probably would have continued to keep it to themselves if Whitley had not written Communion. I'm here tonight because of that book. And let's bring Whitley on to talk about it. Hi, Whitley.
Hi, how are you? It's good to be back, Steve.
Well, your mic is healthy. It's going to turn
down. My mic is healthy, you say?
Your microphone is very healthy, yes.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Yeah, we can hear you quite well. So, but I meant what I said about communion and everything you've done. There are a lot of people involved in the research and the experience and things that go back that predate communion for sure. But really, to me, nothing brought people together on the subject the way your book did. I mean, I myself personally knew I was seeing UFOs. I knew I was having strange experiences, but I didn't connect the strange experiences with the UFOs necessarily. And when I don't think I was even halfway through communion when I realized I was in trouble.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I didn't know. They said to me, "You're our chosen one," when I was in the room with them. And I thought, what the hell can that mean? If I had understood it, I probably would have been too nervous to write anything. But Anne understood it immediately. Once I told her what had happened, she knew what to do. So someone in the family understood from the beginning. And I'm glad she did, because if she hadn't, it would not have been as well. The whole thing wouldn't have been as executed as well as it was. I would have called the book something different other than Communion. Communion is the only title the book should have, the only title. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. I see one of your communion busts behind you.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
There's a big owl back there, too, right next to it with unusual eyes. But you never got one of these, but you'd probably scare somebody with it. I won't say who.
I've already done that. You know as well as I do. It was a friend of mine who had
a friend of yours.
Well, I was driving past their house that was in the back seat, and I thought, well, maybe I'll go out in the backyard and hold it up in the light, the kitchen window. And what I did not realize is, I mean, they knew me and knew I had it. It was no secret, and I didn't expect anything to go wrong. I mean, I thought it was just a little joke, and I'd probably come in and have a coffee or something with them. And so I held it up into the light, but as I did it, I realized they owned a gigantic, horrible bird. I mean, I say it's horrible. They loved their bird. I don't even know what it was. It was a big, colorful thing, not a parrot, but it had a tremendously loud voice. And when I held the thing up, I realized the bird was the only one that could see it in the house. And the bird goes berserk, screaming and flapping in its cage and everything. Just goes like it's having some kind of a fit. And I thought, oh my God, and I pull the thing out of the light and run off and get my car and drive away. And as I ran away, I could see the husband in the house running around trying to figure out what happened to the bird. So I guess I was an alien to that bird.
I guess so.
I never told them about it. I figured, why bother? They'll forget about it. I'm sure they have.
Well, you just did, but they probably didn't hear this show, so you're safe there.
Well, yeah,
It was
well,
a bigger bus too. It was
it
full
was pretty
size.
big. Yeah, it
Yeah,
certainly
this one's
convinced
not
the
full
birds that
size.
something was very, very wrong.
Wow. Yeah, I made a few of them over the years, and I sent you a couple of them, and who knows whatever happened to them. But anyway, getting back to communion.
I think I've got one of them still in my storage space in Texas. I don't know, when I moved out here and things got so confused, the other one might have slipped off the truck along with quite a few of other belongings.
It ended up
If
in
anyone's ever moved interstate, you know that one set of possessions leaves and another set arrives, and the set that arrives is a little smaller than the one that left.
Yeah,
at least that's my experience.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, getting back to communion and to Anne. I mean, Anne was it's like the foundation of all of this. She was just such a backbone to all this work that you did together.
Everything it's the backbone to everything. I think the government people probably wish it wasn't there. They'd like to be in control of this, but they never will be. It belongs to us, the ordinary people.
Yeah, it does. And in fact, that's the very thing that Jacques Vallée said to me when he took me behind the curtains at the Vicki Lawrence show that we did, the national broadcast on this subject. And he pulled me aside to talk to me and told me that exact same thing. He told me some other amazing things too that I've shared with you, but not unless I get his permission to share them publicly. I can't and shouldn't. But you know what?
Yeah, don't share anything that you don't have permission to share if you're not asked not to share.
Well, yeah, I need to talk to him at some point.
Except with me, your audience, and the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kidding. No. I've had, that's a big issue in my life because I've been exposed to three levels of secrecy. One is official secrets that I accidentally learned. And those I feel free to talk about, although I generally don't, because unless I don't feel they're being kept for a good reason. And then official secrets I've heard and been told to keep to myself. Those I don't like to have. I only got a few of those. And I always say to someone, stop right here. I don't have a clearance. You can't tell me this.
Right.
So,
no, because Intel can get very comfortable with you because of who you are and what you know, what you've experienced.
Well, they put me in that way. Back in the 90s, it was proposed that I get a security clearance. And I said no, because then everything I wrote would have to be cleared through the Defense Department, and I forget it. Yeah, I know all their secrets, but I also know that their secrets are not their secrets aren't that big. Their biggest secret is they don't know what the hell's going on. That's their biggest secret. And that I think we all know. The third type of secret is the visitor's secrets. And they do have secrets.
Of course.
And I have been very judicious about that because some of those secrets are vulnerabilities. And I do not wish to get into that area.
No.
I just ignore it completely. I don't keep any secrets that are earth-shattering. I don't have any. I've never been told anything that was earth-shattering. So I keep, I don't think the one or two things I am aware of that are official secrets, one of them doesn't even have to do with this subject. It just is completely ancillary to it and has to do with a type of engine, not a gravitic engine, but just a type of conventional engine. And I learned it quite accidentally, and I found out it was an official secret. And so I keep it to myself. It is irrelevant. If I explained it to you, it wouldn't matter in any way to disclosure. So I don't have any. I don't think I would keep a secret if I knew it to be relevant to disclosure. And I'm not in that space. I wouldn't. I don't think they could count on me to keep a secret like that.
Now, you didn't talk much about your childhood experience with this extraordinary experience where many of us here are involved in, except you did the Solving the Communion Enigma book, which
Yeah.
I really liked that book. And it was
Well,
really,
thank you.
well, it was also was a shocker to me because we've known each other for a really long time and we've talked a lot and about so many things, but not everything. And when you described being taken to that facility with those people, and the things that are going on in that book, it kind of shocked me because I never talked about when I was growing up in San Francisco, the men coming at night to my house on 47th Avenue and taking me out of my house in my pajamas to the school that I went to. And we were in the lower part of it, which was kind of a basement area that where the cafeteria was and stuff, but there were hallways there. And they were putting us through tests and doing all kinds of things. And there were all these other kids there and they were all in their night clothes. And it was pretty terrifying. And you touched on some of those things in the book. And it really, it really got me the same way when I was reading Communion. So many things I could relate to got me then.
Well, the question is what actually happened.
I
I was very hesitant to talk about the things that had happened to me prior to the fact that I found out quite by accident that my best friend in the world was also recruited for the same program. And the difference is this: he was 9 when he was recruited, I was 7. So a lot of difference between a 7-year-old mind and a 9-year-old mind. You're learning fast in those years. He was in the living room when it happened and knew the Air Force personnel who came in to recruit him. He knew them personally. We all knew them. They were part of the neighborhood. They were part of our social world. They weren't secretive people coming, creeping in the house and knocking on the door in black suits or anything. They were people my parents went to square dancing with on weekends up at the officers club. My whole area of town was very much a military area because we had Fort Sam Houston, Randolph Air Force Base, Kelly Air Force Base, and a lot of the officers lived in these neighborhoods. So the ones that didn't live on base, and everyone, of course, they all wanted off-base housing. So we knew them all. It wasn't a secretive thing. I do not recall anything about being recruited. I just recall being picked up and taken to this thing on Thursday nights. And it was clearly not what my parents had approved of, or because they damn near killed me from the stress. And as I say, I would have thought, oh, it was trouble with a teacher or something that happened when I was 7, not this. And then I talked to my friend about it, and he said, well, I was recruited too. And I said, well, I'm amazed. And he said, yeah, my parents wouldn't let me go because of the Skinner box. And I was stunned that my memory had actually been so accurate at that age. And there's no Skinner box, by the way. Skinner box is a confined learning thing. B.F. Skinner, the psychologist,
about B.F. Skinner, yes, I know.
Yeah,
I know of him
where
well.
it's repetitive. You're given repetitive. You're sort of forced to learn things by endless repetition. And anyway, his daughter committed suicide, I think, understandably, but in any case, that was not. I don't remember anything like that. I just remember dark and loud noise. That's all. And and the next thing I knew, I was going to the hospital, and the thing, I wasn't in the thing anymore.
I felt that my parents knew what was going on. They allowed it to go on. I lived right near the Presidio and a number of bases, and there were like people and like doctors there and nurses, and I remember
Yeah, I
being
can
shown
understand there would be
film.
doctors there.
That we were showed films.
You remember which films?
Looking at it as dim as it is now after all these years, they were black and white. There were things laying on a table that didn't look human, and they were moving, and they were looking for some sort of reaction from us. That's what I remember. It's sketchy. I mean, I was only what, 6, 7 years old.
Weird. I thought you meant movies like kids' movies, like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
No. They were showing us stuff that was just bizarre.
Now, see, there's something demonic about that. I mean, it's to do that to children. It's not right.
No,
You
but
know,
but
you know.
but our government is kind of demonic on a lot of levels.
Well, more than a little. I mean, last week's Dreamland was with uh, uh, Peter Robbins, an investigator who has,
Sure, I know who he is.
culled together dozens of photographs of Mars and the moon that and NASA has airbrushed stuff out of.
Oh
And you
yeah,
can,
it's terrible.
I mean, they are, God, they are lying by omission. And we are paying them a fortune to do this, to deceive us. Come on. And, one administration after another, including the current one, they're all in it. I don't
sure.
buy the idea that the Trump administration is going to be any different from any of the others.
Oh no, not at all.
If it discloses anything, it'll be because it's lying in another way, but it will still be a lie. I don't buy it for a second. Not because I'm against or for one president or another, but because from Truman on down to this day, including the last Trump administration, including them, it's all been covered up. When after my mama died, we were looking through her things, and she had kept my report card from my second grade year when that happened, with all of the neat little printed, handwritten, absent due to illness, month after month in the report card. And I said to my sister as we were looking through this box, look at that. Mama kept that report card when I was so sick all these years, and she took it away from me, and I never saw it again. And I said, what did you do with the report card? And she said, I threw it out. We don't need that. Why did she do it? She was there with me. She and one of the boys across the street. She had a very sad and difficult and unfortunate life. It was like she never kind of grew up. And the same thing happened to the boy across the street. He never kind of grew up. When he was an adult, he was still living at home. He died finally after being overdosed with cortisone at the VA hospital in San Antonio after a fall, from back pain. And that was a few months after he told that guy, what was his name? Oh, well, the man who wrote Report on Communion, about remembering me come back. Ed Conroy was his name.
Ed Conroy, of course, yeah.
Coming back from a trip, telling about all these soldiers I'd seen lying on cots. In other words, a story that corroborates the story in Communion. And so did they kill him? It's possible. I think they might have killed Robert Sauerbacher, the metallurgist, who tells me, Stanton Friedman put me in touch with him when I was writing Communion and beginning to do research. And so Sauerbacher was completely open. He said, yeah, we've been studying the metal from Roswell for years, and he explained a lot about it and so forth and so on. And then he said to me, and we talked for about 20, 30 minutes, and he says, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you write up everything you remember about what happened to you? This is before I had decided to even write the book, and send it to me by overnight. Send it right away, because I want to read it, and I'm going to call you back, and we're going to have another conversation. So the next day I write it up, and I send it by overnight. And the courier telephones me, which is very unusual, and says the next day, says, I can't deliver this because the recipient has died. And he died. They say he fell off his boat. And that's true. And, you get into this deeply, and you find people get killed a lot. They die a lot in this. It's like people who knew about the Kennedy assassination. There's a scorched earth policy there, boy. They all die.
Yep.
Even one I knew who was told the truth by a gentleman in San Antonio. A lot of people in Texas know the truth because, he died there, and the Democratic Party was in charge of what was going on. And, so a lot of people. Anyway, this doctor proceeds to stand up at a conference and tell a whole story. And I said to him, it's a story I've heard, and, and I don't know if it's a true story, the true story or not. But I said, you shouldn't do that, because you tell that story, and that's the Texas story, I call it. Things happen to people, and the damn doctor was dead a year later. So this is a much more serious business than it looks, and it's a lot uglier than it looks.
Sure,
on the one hand. On the other hand, the visitors are both dangerous and challenging, and also willing to try to make us free. I mean, they're not saints, but they're also not devils. And I think we got a lot of devils on our side.
Well, yeah, I find it very interesting that some people call them angels and demons, and there's a lot of figures out there involved in the subject matter that use that terminology. I don't see that, but in my own people, I've seen that. I've known human beings that I would consider angels, and I've known a great deal more that I would consider demons. And
yeah, it's possible that people can be turned into demons. I think that's what the SS did. I think Hitler was an active, conscious demon, and he captured souls in the SS and turned them into demons. Human beings can be turned into demons. There's no question in my mind about that. And they can be turned into angels.
I don't think the public has.
Why my wife said, I asked her what enlightenment was, and she said to me, enlightenment is what happens when there's nothing left of us but love.
That's
She
right.
was talking about becoming an angel. That's what it is.
I don't think people realize how bad the SS and the Nazis really were, the things that they did. A lot of it was.
No, a lot of people have. You had that bozo, that funny-looking man, Elon Musk up there. I don't follow television very carefully, as you know, making Nazi salutes. Now you see him with the president all the time, and sure enough, he's throwing people out of their jobs right and left, thousands of them, and doesn't care about their lives or anything. Send them, throwing them out on the street like they were just garbage. Well, I'm sorry, that doesn't have anything to do with love, but it has a lot to do with what the master of the key said. Sin is denial of the right to thrive.
That's right.
And you get that. You get people in high office doing that on a massive scale, and the next thing you know, they've turned into demons too.
But it can't last for them.
Very careful about that. We don't want demons running our country.
No, but it can't last for them either, because you just can't go on like that, as history has proven, without.
No. It lasted for Hitler. It lasted
Well,
for Hitler. Hitler's life didn't matter to him. What mattered to him was the destruction of other lives of
right.
all kinds. He wasn't interested in German nationalism. He wasn't interested in anything. He was a serial killer. There were, and this I can't prove, but I'm pretty sure it was true. He was under investigation by the the Viennese police department back before World War I for killing prostitutes. He was a serial killer. A serial killer ended up in total control of a country. And what happened? 50 million people died, is what happened.
Yes. Yeah.
How close are we to that right now? I don't know. I think Trump loves his country and I think he loves his people, but if he keeps it up, he's liable to turn into a demon.
Yeah.
So
So,
you're talking to somebody who doesn't give a damn about politics or anything. I'm only interested in my relationship with the visitors and their relationship with us.
well,
So let's get off
yeah,
the subject.
I can agree with that. Thank you. Um, Speaking of the visitors, when you were young, as when I was young, I remember clearly being told by someone not to talk about this, not to talk about this, but it was for my own good. It was for my protection to not talk about this stuff. And I kept it to myself very faithfully all through my childhood, um, and never talked about it. Do you remember anything like that?
I don't remember being told anything. I just remember a few things that happened, and I didn't talk about them because nobody else did either. I was a little boy, and
Yeah.
I remember two or three things that happened, and I don't recall talking about them. But I don't recall being told not to. Daddy was pretty secretive. I mean, zip your lip was one of the things. You keep your lip zipped. Don't spill your beans and stuff. But it was not about this. It was not specific. He just was he liked to think, that a man chose his words carefully.
So all these years later, I'm at a MUFON meeting. You went to them yourself. They were not Moore Park. Well, it was near Moore Park. I forget the town, but we went several times to those. Roger Lear was at that time heading up that MUFON group, and I would be standing before I would do my talk with my artwork that made your implant in your ear go red hot. And while I was standing there in the dark, this very charismatic man came up to me, older gentleman, and showed me his CIA ID, and then smiled and said, what are you doing, Steve?" And I said, "What do you mean? What am I doing?" He says, "You're not supposed to talk about this stuff." And that gave me the chills, because how did he know I wasn't supposed to talk about this stuff? Does that mean that what I was told all those years ago that I have this memory of, they somehow know about too? That's, you better than anyone I know would.
I don't know what to think about that. I've never been approached by anyone like that I recall.
Well, what there were, his picture appeared in a group of us from MUFON, and he showed up several times, and you recognized him. I remember you told me, but that was a long time ago, so you may not remember that.
I recognized him.
You recognized him. He was a bit of a butterball, gray hair, balding on top. He was very approachable, very friendly. He had a
I
lot
remember
of
that man, but you didn't tell me anything about him being a CIA officer.
Well, that's what he told me he was.
Well, he didn't tell me that.
So I don't know if
I remember.
anybody
I did
can
know
make up.
that. I knew someone who looked like that back in those days. I haven't seen him in years.
Yeah,
I don't remember their name or anything.
Anyone can make up, CIA
A fake
convention.
ID, of course.
In the dark. But how did he know that? How did he, or was he just guessing? It just.
Well, maybe he was just guessing. Maybe it's just
yeah. Let's hope so.
Not trying to feel a feeling of self-importance or something. Who knows?
But then I got
never worry about
emails.
that kind of crap. People.
I got emails from CIA. I got emails from CIA, NSA, and and they said the same thing.
I've never gotten any emails from the CIA or the NSA.
I wish I had kept those darn things, but that was
Well,
so
I
long
haven't.
ago.
Maybe you can find them in your computer somewhere.
Well, that was back in the 90s. You and I had
Oh,
just met. That was about 94.
yeah. Yeah, well, I will
You
say that a lot of
saw
people
them. You saw
who
them.
meet
You
me when
probably don't.
a lot of people when they meet me first have funny things happen to them. They're followed by black cars and weird stuff happens. Uh, and or they get I can't explain it. I just have to. They get visited, stuff
Sure.
like that.
Well, you know
Uh,
that Jilly and I are besieged with that kind of stuff to the point where
I know you were, yeah.
she was literally losing her mind, because she was seeing the evidence of it, and it was absolutely overwhelming. They were trying to get me to stop for some reason, to stop appearing on TV programs with you and Roger and Yvonne, and because they were all national. And here was this Hollywood makeup artist and worked on all these big movies saying, "Hey, this stuff is real, folks. I'm not, some crazy person." And they were prying the pressure on us so heavily. I still have pictures of the helicopters, all of that stuff.
Yeah, we used to have
It's all your fault. Okay, great.
well, I was on a friend's movie set recently in New Mexico, and after I left, all these black helicopters started showing up. And when I was there, they videoed some of them too, one of them anyway. And when I was there, there's a lot of interference on their electronic equipment and stuff, and I can't explain it, and I honestly kind of don't care. It doesn't affect me. I can't explain it. The black helicopters didn't land. Little green men didn't come out of them.
Sure.
I don't know why I have what Anne used to call electroleptic fits. I had one today, in fact. I took this computer that I'm on right now in for repair because its battery had died, but nothing to do. It was a defective battery. It was nothing to do with any. It was nothing strange. And I got back in the car, and this cars all now have this screen on them. That mine's a Prius, and they all have this
Sure.
screen
Yeah.
that without the screen, you don't know quite what's going on with the car, and so the screen goes black. It's a Toyota. They don't break. That's why I have Toyotas, because they don't tend to break.
Right.
Or blow up. And I'm not like my brother's cars all blew up for years.
Yeah, that's why I wouldn't let you near my Volkswagen Golf. I said, stay away from it. It'll explode.
Yes, go away from it, exactly. But anyway, so but who knows why that happens? Once I walked into twice I've walked into friends' houses, and every single electronic device they've had in the house has been ruined instantly. It's just gone black. But fortunately, I thought, well, I'm going to have to take the car in because I can't drive like this. And I got it home, and now it's working again. So it was an electroleptic fit, because the fits pass. They don't destroy everything. But we all have that. You probably have it too.
I have it. Yeah, we knock out streetlights.
Streetlight people. Yeah, I haven't. I've put out in years. I haven't put out streetlights, but I've been putting them out lately. And
even the LED ones, correct?
I don't know anything about them. I only know that I used to put them out, and if I came back and walked back under them again, they would go back on.
That's cool. Right. Well, we were out driving around town one night, and we were driving down the street, and as we drove under the lights, they kept going out, and we kind of looked at each other, and you said, which one of us do you think is doing it?
Right. One of the families who had all of their electronics fried, we were going home from a restaurant, and we were on a highway, and as we went down the highway, whole banks of street lights would go out, and they were laughing, and I thought to myself, I hope this doesn't lead to anything. And then we go into their house, and a few minutes later, the wife turns on the TV, and she says, the TV doesn't work. Then they try the radio doesn't work, and nothing worked. Their computers didn't work, anything. They had, hundreds of dollars in repairs. And Anne said, I hope we don't lose all of our friends. But what do you suppose that is?
I don't know. I was going to ask. I was going to ask you the same thing.
Here. A lot of people listening to this right now, I'm sure, have had that happen to them.
Oh yeah. Well, now that you've said that, if you're watching the chat, you'll see it pop up.
Yeah, I'm seeing the chat.
When I went to Roger took me to his radiologist to have my arm photographed and to x-rayed. That night when I left there, I had the Z then, which has a T top, and it's, you can look up through it. And I get in the car, and the parking light over me goes out. And back out, I drive past the other ones, they go out. All the way down to the freeway, they go out. I'm on the 118, banks of them are going out all the way home. It was exhilarating because back then, that was the 90s and this stuff was all new. And now you just sort of yawn at it when it happens. But I have no idea. And I always thought it had something to do with the sodium vapor lights and the sensors on them, which still had something to do with my being near them. But I thought when they switched over to LEDs that they wouldn't do that anymore, but they do. So I have no idea. I don't have a luck. Fortunately, I don't blow out computers or things like that because I rely on them so much to do the work I do. But
I've blown my computers out many times. Many times.
Wow.
Someone mentioned Anne, seeing the picture of Anne behind me in there in the chat. I'm watching the chat as we talk. I wear both rings because Anne and I are still married. I'll be married to Anne always. And Anne is why we're talking here. She's why the book was called Communion. Anne is why it all happened. If it hadn't been for Anne, I don't think they ever would come down my chimney at all. Because they had Anne there and they knew Anne could do it.
I found in all of this, Anne's presence very grounding. When I was around her, I felt safe. I felt like I could talk to her about anything, and she'd always have something amazingly intelligent to say back to me, no matter what I asked her about or talked to her about.
Yeah.
It was really
Me
something.
too. She said such brilliant things in her life and afterwards too. The afterlife revolution is full of things Anne said after she died that were just incredible, beautiful, true things that and she was a brilliant presence. And the funny thing about it is we met through this dating thing called Mind Mates. And I had been living in London and failing to get girls because English girls were not too terribly keen on an American. I mean, some of them were. I even tried a dating service in England, and that didn't work because as soon as they heard my accent, they had a completely different attitude toward me. Not that they, some of them actually I liked the idea of an American boyfriend, but most didn't. Anyway, I come back to the United States. I go to New York. I want girls, and in my life, I'm 23 years old, and so I try going to singles bars. That does not work because I was raised by a family where you didn't lie. You didn't lie. And Daddy was a man so well known for his honesty in his business that his contracts in the oil business, these contracts can be 50 pages long, but his contracts are 2 pages long because everyone in the business, from Texaco right down to the local wildcatters, knew Dad could be counted on. And he never lied. He never lied. And
it's important.
Played practical jokes. That's an entirely different story. But he never lied. not
Well, you
seriously. So
you got plenty of them in on him. I've heard.
yeah,
I've heard
well, right.
many.
He anyway. So I'm in these singles bars and trying and everybody else, every other guy in the singles bar is something cool. Lawyer, doctor, airline pilot, you name it. They're all cool. I'm the lowest of the low in the advertising industry, a media planner with absolutely, a zilch, but I'm not going to tell them I'm anything different. So, they all went for the lawyers, the doctors, etc. That is to say, the other media planners. This media planner said, I'm a media planner, and they were gone because they knew, I was making $125 a week. They, and crunching numbers. So I met this girl on this dating thing. And as soon as we met and started hanging out, we moved in together a year before we were married. We moved in together because we couldn't. Our first date, we went to a movie, and I thought I wanted her to come back to the apartment, and I had a friend staying at the apartment, and come back to the apartment and talk, and because I really like this girl, we go back to the apartment. We do not talk. We do not have anything to. I go into the bedroom, close the door. The friend left in the living room. He was in a sleeping bag, at least. I mean, I had a sleeping bag, and it's only a 1-bedroom apartment. And we go to bed. It's the first time for me in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And we were never apart again until Anne passed on. And weird stuff started to happen immediately, as soon as we were together. And it had to do with the fact that we had found each other and that it was Anne and it was me. And then it goes to communion and everything that's followed.
Wow.
All because of that relationship, because we came together. Was it chance or not? Felt like chance to me, but who knows?
Yeah. So, well, didn't have my pee filter on. Anne was involved.
Yeah, Anne was involved, but you ask Anne and she would just laugh. I mean, she's absolutely not. And then she got annoyed because she'd say, you get all of the attention. I said, Annie, think about it. Do you really want the kind of attention I get? I don't think so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, because the visitors, attention from the visitors was hard, but attention from the media was equally hard in some respects. Although the visitors were more challenging. When I decided, after I realized it was all real, that I was going to go out in the woods in the night to show them I was ready to do this. I was ready to do it.
That's an amazing feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you went out into the night in the woods like that by yourself.
I said to Anne, let's go out in the woods and meet him. She said, okay, you go ahead and go out in the woods and meet him.
There you go.
I'm going to stay here with my kid and I'll stay here with my little boy. They're your friends, Whitley. You're the one. You're the one they came and you're the one who met them. So I did it. I went out in the woods.
It's
the whole relationship built there. What?
It's difficult to describe the feeling that you have when you go into the woods all by yourself late at night and you very strongly sense a presence and you're drawn to it and you're scared as hell, but you do it anyway. And I don't think there's any way to put into words what that feels like. I mean, just talking about it now, I get that feeling. Immediately goes to my emotions. My eyes well up.
I was damn
because I did it. I did it too, Whitley.
When did you do it?
When I was very young. I would sneak out of the house at night. We had a wooded area outside the house, up the hill below the Nike base that I would go into. My mom didn't know because I stayed downstairs. There was this whole downstairs part of our house that you had to go outside the house, go down in the backyard to get to. It was kind of like this underground facility that had a bar in it and bunk beds and in a 90-gallon fish tank. And I
Man, I never a fish.
spent a lot of my time alone down there because I liked being by myself because I
That
felt
is so
that
weird. I never heard anything like this before in my life. You've never even told me this.
no, but that's what I mean is we've known each other for years, but we haven't talked about everything.
Not at
And
all. I
I would
certainly you
I
never
would
talked about
sneak
this.
out. I would sneak out and would go up that hill at the night, and I could hear the owls and the crickets, and it was dark. And when I got up there, I don't remember what happened after that. I certainly have a feeling about what happened, but I was drawn to it. I remember
Well, you
coming
remember
to
the
one.
fish tank.
I was completely unclothed, and all my clothes were on the ground. I remember I was freezing to death, and they put them on, and I ran back to the house and got into that bunk bed and just like didn't know what happened, but I didn't know why I was doing it.
It's very strange. I have, I mean, for me to say someone else's experience is very strange is really strange. In and of itself. In any case, um, I, uh, I don't remember anything like that. When I was a kid,
Well, the secret school, kind of. I mean,
yeah, that's truly strange. I have to tell you,
yeah.
because how could it be true? That's the thing about that book, The Secret School. It's always bothered me. I can't tell if it's imaginary or not, but there are certain things about it, the most imaginary parts of it, there's evidence that they actually did happen. That's the thing that's so weird about that. I mean, some of the things are pretty straightforward. Going to Mrs. Carter's observatory, it's there now, and the Carter house is open to the public often, and you can go up and see it. Their grandsons had it beautifully restored, and
Riding your bike at night.
but I couldn't have gone down to her house on my bike at night. It was too far. It's not possible. But how in the hell did I get there then? I just don't know. Or the other thing is the place in the Almas Basin.
Well, it happened a long time ago, and that's
I found it. I found the tree. I found the benches. I found everything. But how could a little
the tree was there still?
The tree is still there. The tree is magnificent. It's beautiful and huge. And when I first found it, it's on a cliff. There was a perfectly straight path leading up that cliff from the longer path below it. Very narrow, but it was just as straight as an arrow. And I remember very well going up there, and then going to the benches. And then this hooded figure, who was probably one of the nuns, was an old sister's home back there.
Right.
Was what taught us, but it just doesn't hold water, because I can't believe I could have gotten there. I have gone that route I drove over and then walked in, and boy, that is a tough journey. And for a little child to do it in the night, in my opinion, would be impossible and horribly dangerous, because it's full of snakes and all kinds of stuff. And I just don't believe it. But the problem is, if it didn't happen, how can it be that I remembered the place so precisely and wrote it all down before I found it?
Right.
Even to the description of the tree.
I do think that something's protecting us, because when I stayed in Bernie, California for an entire year with my grandmother, and this is a town that's above 4,000 feet in altitude. It's a little logging town in the middle of nowhere. I had a number of experiences there, but I used to leave that house, which was just bordered a forest full of lava fields and everything else. It was as wild a forest as you can imagine. And I would go with my dog and my little shotgun with the corks on the end, just like something out of a story, and hike into the forest. And I came across mountain lions and big snakes and everything that could have killed me. Nothing touched me. Nothing hurt me. The mountain lion just looked at me looked at the dog, and just continued across the road and disappeared into the woods. And I had no fear at all. So I got the feeling, looking back on that, I could have been eaten alive by bears or anything else, but nothing touched me. I was completely safe the whole time. So you probably would have been allowed that same experience. There was some presence there all the time. If I think back on it now, and I think if you think back on it now, you're going to feel that there's was some presence there. That something was really watching over you.
Well, yeah, but I still can't understand how I could have gone there in the night. I was scared of the dark. I was just a little boy. It just
Yeah,
doesn't
I
hold
didn't have
water.
that far to go. So
I had plenty of distance to go, and I had to go on a bicycle. And how I also remember being in Mrs. Carter's house in the dead of the night. And unless I was taken a night in the bicycles and stuff are all just screen memories, I
it's
don't see
possible.
it even actually happening any other.
Have you ever been in a situation where you've come to out of a dead sleep and find yourself, as I did, standing in my underwear and a t-shirt in someone's house I didn't even know? And I got terrified. What the hell is going on? I looked around and I saw little grays moving around the house, and they told me not to worry. I'm with them. And they told you
No,
that would be.
that hasn't happened to me, Steve.
Well, let me tell
At
you,
least
it's
not that I
nothing
remember.
I would wish on you, because my first thought was someone's going to wake up, come out into the room where I am, see me, and take a gun to me. There's some guy standing there in a t-shirt
Yeah,
and his
well,
underwear.
even though it's not Texas, that could happen.
Yeah, I
I've had
know.
2 friends shot for trespassing in Texas, and neither one of them there was never even a trial in either case.
Yeah. No, things are a little different there. Um, so the fourth mind, is there going to be another book for you after this one on this
Oh, who
subject?
knows? I never think about that until it happens. The books,
So in other words,
whenever I finish a book, I figure I'll never be able to write another book. I have no idea what to do. And then
yeah,
3 months later, 6 months later, suddenly there's a book in my head. And so maybe not.
yeah. Well, I get this gut feeling that you're going to have something happen to you, an experience that's going to have you write another book. Just remember, I told
Well,
you
we'll
that.
see. We'll see. I love to write. I really like to
Well,
write fiction
sure.
too.
You're a great writer.
Oh,
You love it.
no one will buy my fiction. It's so frustrating. I wrote this beautiful
Mary's in
science.
the other room saying, I love his fiction. I love his fiction.
Tell Mary she's a very sweet person. And
She,
this books. I wrote a book called New about these. It's a science fiction book, and it's a really beautiful book. And another book called Orenda, and Orenda is set in the Adirondacks, in the secret a secret place where native peoples from before the woodland Indian era, from the mound builder era, about back many thousands of years ago, still live in the old ways. And it's just a magical book.
my
The
God.
two of them together have probably sold 200 copies.
When did you publish this book?
Orenda?
Mhm.
It's the first book I self-published. And I self-published it because no one would buy books from me anymore. That was when the great destruction, the derailing of Whitley occurred.
Right.
It started with the South Park incident, where they lampooned me on South Park, and that
Yeah.
started the kind of ball rolling, because it's known as, in the publishing business, as well, in any way, it's what it is a kind of thing where you just go into decline, and it's unstoppable, because say they sell in 10,000 books to the trade, and the trade sells through 8,000, and 2,000 are returned. That's not bad. An 8 out of 10 sale. So the next time they buy the book, they buy 12,000. I mean, they buy 9,000 because they sold out 8. But that means you don't have as much shelf space. You're not as visible. So this time they sell out 7. Then before you know it, they're not buying your book anymore. You're dead. And that happened to me. And I was still writing these beautiful, wonderful books, and no one would buy them. And so I started publishing them myself, and no one would buy them from me for sure either, because in those days, self-publishing was just starting, and nobody really knew what it was about. Then you
what I
came
found
along.
about your
No, go ahead.
what I found about your fiction, though, is it is fiction, but it always has this very strong undertone of relating to the subject we're talking about tonight. It definitely there. You're describing the people that made the mounds, or before the people that made the mounds. I mean,
Yeah.
those people are extremely spiritual and well connected with what I call the cosmic web. Thank you, John. And so so much of your work, whether it's about the visitors directly or actual experiences, still woven, the hunger, all of them, they relate. And I found them all wonderful.
There's a lot of weirdness there. I knew so much about this before I knew anything about it. It's very strange. My cabin was near New Paltz, New York. And The Wolfen was written 5 or 6 years, 6 years, I think. No, I guess it was actually written 7 years before the community experience. And it contains in it a description of something that actually happened to my son, of this being, one of the Wolfen in the novel, comes to the window of the cabin this family is in near New Paltz, New York, and looks in the window at the child. And that happened to my son. And the Wolfen are the Greys. They are the Greys. And yeah, thank you, Jamie, for buying my book in flea markets. It's very helpful. At least you get to read it. Okay, now Jim Condor has a question.
Yes.
How do these ET UFO related books get into your head, do you suppose? I know how. They right here, the implant. It's a committee now that works on those books. It's not just me. I do this meditation at 3 o'clock every morning, and it's a very much of a give and take. The first time that started to really happen was when I was working on Afterlife Revolution with Anne. And she started using the implant. I didn't know that at the time, but she started using it, and we worked together. And then midway during, I figured out it was the implant she was using. And then I began to consciously use it. And I understood the visitors used to wake me up at 3 o'clock every morning. They still do, in fact, or I'm expected to wake myself up if they don't. And I go in the living room and I sit and I take my attention out of my mind and put it on my body. And a link opens up. It's not downloading at all. It's not downloading things that I'm supposed to just regurgitate. It's a very much a give and take. It feels like an editorial committee. And I think it's people. I think it's mostly my girl. I think it's Anne and a group of her friends. And we work on these books together. That's how they come. And in the case of like the most recent one, The Fourth Mind, a friend sent me the document that's made reference to in the book that's on Reddit, which is from a biologist who worked on the bodies that are at Fort Detrick, the alien bodies. There's 2 or 3 of them there, or there were. Who knows what's happened to them since? But in any case, I've known those bodies existed since General Exon told me about the fact that he had held one of them in his arms. And I heard from someone, I believe in Australia years ago at a conference, a military guy from the US, who said that they had alien bodies at Fort Detrick, as I recall. It could have been another instance. But in any case, here comes this document that's been put up on Reddit, and it's about bodies at Fort Detrick. And so I thought, well, I'll read this. And as I read it, I saw that there were things in it that only I know, that I have observed of the visitors.
Right.
That they knew, and I thought this has to be authentic. And then there was one thing that you know, and a few other people do, which is some of them at least have these black eyes, they're eye coverings, and you take
Yes, they are.
Yeah. Well, not every one of them, I don't think, but in any case, I don't know. I have you know more about that. I've seen that maybe once. Tell us about your experience with it.
I've seen the visitors without the eye covers. I sent you that picture the other day. Yeah, and because it was,
that plus the vague memory I have, plus what it says in the document, is why the cover of The Fourth Mind has the grays without eye coverings. Let me grab it, since I don't think you.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is too, Whitley, is I after I found that image and sent it to you, I found one I did later on, like according to the time date on it, like a few days later, and the eyes were that color. Their eyes were that color. And if you watch the film, The Dreamtime, again, you'll see that when the visitor, the only time you see her is she bends down to the character and says, "You're awake now." And one's on and one's off, and her eye is exactly like that. And that film was done, 3-4 years ago now. So I got this impression that I had the eye color wrong, and I changed it to the whitish blue. And it could be just a coincidence. But after all this time, there's been so many coincidences that you have to, at a certain point, realize that they can't all be.
Well, also, there's a lot of memories,
their feet
that
too
seem very vague and indistinct. And then, like when I was reading that document, I thought, my God, this isn't vague, and this happened. It had to have happened. There's an interesting question in here. What is your favorite instance of the visitors showing their personalities? Well, they have. There's something sort of fundamental here that we can talk about for a minute.
Okay.
There's many ways of obviously dividing, coming up with a difference between species in this universe. But one of the primary differences is there are voiced species and unvoiced ones. The unvoiced ones, like the Greys, they do not speak, but they are telepathic. And if you go on the telepathy tapes, Kai Dickens's wonderful podcast that you can find on Spotify, don't miss it, the telepathy tapes. I interviewed Kai on Dreamland recently, and also the doctor who is the discoverer of this, Diana Hennessy Powell. The unvoiced human beings, the autistic people and so forth who have no voice, many of them are telepathic too.
That's very true.
Yeah, so
that's been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Dr. Powell, here's her book. She's proved it. In the ASP Enigma. Anyway, they're unvoiced. This means two things. They do not speak. They do not sing. They can make sounds, very complex sounds. I've heard those sounds, very, very rich. but they don't speak and they don't sing. They don't have a syrinx like a bird, and they don't have vocal cords, so they're not going to be speaking or making singing noises. Now, they are fluently telepathic on many different levels.
You can
That
hear them.
means they have a group mind. And I hate it when these military people say hive mind. It's not a hive mind. It's an incredibly complex mind. And this gets to the question, because each participant in this mind has an entirely separate, big, complicated personality. But they don't have things like wars because they only have one mind. They never have differences of opinion. They have a lot of internal discussion, but they always come. It's like when you're chewing over a thought, you're not going to go to war with yourself because part of you disagrees and part of you agrees, unless you're crazy. And they're definitely not crazy. So, and this is true all over this universe, that unvoiced species have group minds and voiced species have single minds. Unvoiced species tend to last for millions and millions of years. Voiced species have a blooming and extraordinary brief life, and then they implode and collapse, and the planets that create them then go back and create another one over a vast amount of time. That's the way it works. We are a voiced species. We have art. We have music. We have an immense welter of creativity and ideas. More happens in the human world in terms of creativity in 30 seconds than happens in the Greys world in 30,000 years. That's the difference. At the same time, they've been here for millions and millions and millions of years, and will be here for a very long, much longer time. But we will flower and fly like a butterfly and then disappear into the bright light of the future. That's what will happen to us. And it will happen here.
Yes.
It's
When
like this. It's
we're both
rich.
disembodied.
What?
When we are both disembodied,
yeah,
are we not of the same substance?
We will be disembodied for a long time until this planet will create bodies that fit us again, and then we won't be disembodied. And that's okay, because that time, it's not time really in that state. It's not time. It'll feel like it'll be something that unfolds very quickly. And we've done it before. And we'll do it again. And because the other thing that people don't understand, they think, space opera, we're part of the planet, like the trees and the flowers and the bugs and the birds.
Correct.
We are part of it. We're not separate from it. We feel, we look at this ridiculous idea, this guy's, the cat with the golden buzzsaw, what's his name? Elon Musk. Wants to go to Mars and colonize Mars and stuff. It's not going to happen.
No.
You'll find out very soon that Mars is fundamentally inhospitable to human life, as indeed is deep space, because we are like a plant. We belong to this earth. We always will. Always. She created us. She gave us birth. She gave us life. And who knows? There's also the other side of the coin, that when we're not in the body, we can travel all kinds of places, taking Earth with us, taking her heart with us in our hearts. If you go out of your body and you go to another world, you take Earth with you every time.
Well, this explains a lot. And ever since I've been a kid, I could feel every tree. I could feel, I was connected with every animal, with every insect, with everything. And I felt that so strongly. And yet that was also something I wouldn't talk about with adults, that I had this relationship with all the life that was all around me. Were all kids like that? I don't know. I know most the kids I knew back then, they were unaware of it. They didn't see it or feel what I felt when I would climb up to the tallest tree in the forest, get to the top of it, and stay up there all day while the wind blew through its leaves or its branches, and I listened to the wind. It was a wonderful thing, hugging that tree and holding onto it and feeling it move, and we were one. That's important.
I remember a time when I was probably about 10 or 11. A group of us were sleeping out in my front yard, and for some insane reason, we decided to go sneak around the neighborhood naked in the middle of the night. and we were doing this, and apparently someone saw us. In fact, I found out the next day that had happened, but what they thought they saw and what was actually there turned out to be two different things. We didn't get in trouble. Anyway, we're going out in the street, and it's very fun. I mean, it's a wild, crazy thing to do. A bunch of little boys and little girls. I mean, we were too little. It's had nothing to do with sex. We were just having a blast, in all these familiar places where you're not ever supposed to be naked, and here we're naked. It was so fun. Suddenly, car lights go on because it was the cops. They'd been tipped off by one of the neighbors who'd seen these, what I later found out she thought were naked dwarfs in her yard. And so all the other kids ran back toward the alley, but I was too far out in the street, and I had to run forward, and I had to run across the street. And I went in down the street there was a lot of big houses, a big estate. And I knew, of course, every single tree, everything like the back of my hand. The cop car is with its siren on, and they're coming roaring down the street. I get into the estate and climb a tree as fast as I can. And I get all the way up into the top of a tree. And then they're down there with their flashlights, and they're pointing their flashlights at bushes and saying, "All right, we see you, come on out," and stuff like that. And I'm up there in the tree. And I proceeded to have the most magical experience, one of the great magical experiences of my childhood, because the south wind was up, which used to blow up from the Gulf of Mexico to San Antonio. You could smell the Gulf of Mexico in those days in the south wind, and the little clouds were flying past, and the stars were out, and the moon, and the tree was swaying, and the leaves were whispering, and the south wind it was like I turned into a magic being naked in the top of that tree.
That's it.
Finally, the cops, I watched them go down and turn out their lights and sit there for quite a while, waiting for the naked dwarf to come out. Of course, I never did. And then I went back to the house, and the other kids were all really glad to see me, and we went to sleep and woke up in the dawn. And I was never since have I felt anything but closeness to the spirit of the trees.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, streakers, John. That's exactly what we were, but we didn't know it at the time.
What?
My mother said to me later that day, Mrs. I forget her name, called to say that she saw naked dwarfs in her out by her pool last night. And I have talked to the other mothers, and we don't feel you children should sleep out so much, because that could be something dangerous. And I thought, thank you, Jesus, for delivering me from the certain spanking that I was going to get. So I survived. In those days, it was corporal punishment all the way in the South anyway. I don't know, in the 50s, I don't know, maybe other hey, Errol, maybe other people had another experience, but I was definitely definitely a candidate for spanking at that moment.
Yeah, I got it too.
You did?
Oh,
Yeah,
corporal
I
punishment,
thought California
absolutely.
kids never get that.
Not
Yeah,
today,
everyone
no.
spanked me, even some of the neighbors. I mean, God, some of the older kids. I was really a bad boy, and I really loved every minute of it. I was
Well, of
terribly
course you.
bad. Yeah.
Well, we talked about a lot of things that I've known you over 30 something years now, and there's things we talked about tonight that we've never talked about before. And obviously it's like there's more.
Always
It's just
more. It's always more. I'm a storyteller by nature. I love to tell stories. No.
Yeah, but when you have a good story to share, to tell, to share.
A big story. Yeah, there's a very big story here.
So going back to the Grays, I hear them talk to me, but it has to be that my mind is converting what they're saying to me into something, not that I understand, but that is comforting to me. My brain is doing it. It's
when
what
I'm
they're
working
saying
on a
into
book with
English.
them, when I'm working on a book with them, it's not verbal. It's
Yeah.
idea. And it's what it is like
Is it visual?
I'm like a fisherman fishing for ideas, and I'm catching them. And some of the ideas are mine, and some of them come from not necessarily the Grace, but whoever's on the other side of the implant. My wife is on the other side of the implant for sure. I know that. And it was devised by a man called Konstantin Rodove. I'll tell you that story. A doctor who is retired now, but was associated with the CIA, was very interested in the implant. And, there's a video on my website. It's probably somewhere on my YouTube channel too, in the unlikely event anyone can find it. Of the implant attempted removal in the 90s and didn't want it removed. And I sort of tricked her, and she said to me after, and anyway, so there was one attempt to remove it and it failed. So anyway, this doctor wants a CT scan of it. And at this point, it was just starting to be functional. This was right after Annie passed on. And in 2017, I think it happened. And so I decided to go ahead and get the CT scan. And I said to him, the CIA guy said, how am I going to explain to my GP that I want a CT scan of my ear? And he said, I'll call him. So he calls him, the doctor. I get the CT scan. There's nothing to it. It's easy. And there were about 5 people in the room, only one of whom was a radiologist, by the way. They all went out. I mean, it was a big deal in this, obviously. So anyway, 2 days before the CT scan, there comes a knock at the door at 4 o'clock in the morning, and there's a signal involved. And I know when I hear that signal to open the door, because it's going to be a physical contact. Usually it's with people, it's usually not with the visitors. And this was no exception. It was with 2 men, one of whom I knew well. I've seen him before many times in these circumstances. And they come in and they proceed to explain how the implant works and who invented it. And he pronounces his name Konstantin Rodove, not Rodove. And I didn't recognize it at first. So immediately upon their leaving, I come in here, get on the computer, and Google Konstantin Rodove. And it turns out it's Konstantin Rodove. He was the best ever electronic voice phenomena researcher. He was capable of getting the dead on video and stuff. He was amazing. And then I realized they were telling me he invented this after death on the other side. So what this does is it communicates with the dead. And if you look carefully, one of the psionics people who was interviewed, I believe, maybe by Ross Coulthart recently, said that you can't understand this until you understand the relationship with death. And that's what Annie said. Annie said years ago, this has something to do with what we call death. This is not about alien contact only. This is about the collapse of the barrier between the living and the dead, the dropping of the veil, the rending of the veil. The living and the dead are going to become one as we evolve into a new species. That's what's going to happen into a new level of the human species, I mean. And this implant is a connection between me, her, and others. And as to who put the implant in, Deborah, I'll get to that in a second. And it is not downloads. I wouldn't accept that. I'm not interested in downloads. It is creative collaboration. That's what it is. It's not anything else. So the implant was put in by two people in May of 1989. Note, I said people. I did not say aliens. There could have been a visitor with them, but I'm not sure of that. I saw a man and a woman. They came into my bedroom at 11 o'clock at night on a May night in the cabin, and upstate New York cabin. And this was put in during that visit. And at first I wanted it taken out. I said, I don't want to be tracked. And said, why do you care? I said, well, I don't want to be tracked. She said, what are they going to find? You go down to the 7-Eleven to buy the paper. You go to the movies. We don't do anything. We don't do anything interesting. If it's a tracking device, they're going to give up in a week. So I hope that answers your question. So that's who put it in, and also who later explained it. And it's the most precious thing I have in my life. It is God. I have to tell you, again, that woman back there who didn't want it taken out, me to get it taken out, and she made me promise once I tricked her into letting me try. She said, Whitley, you have to promise me this is the only time you will try. What did she know? Who was she really? She was just another kid from the sticks. I mean, she was from Ann Arbor, Michigan. I was from San Antonio, Texas. We were nothing special. But look at that. These two people were incredibly special, just like you, Steve, and so many of you guys listening to this right now. And, you know, the government people are trying to
figure us out.
Well, no, they're trying to take over everything. I have John Bridge on Dreamland this week. The first time any of those people have talked to someone, to an experiencer who's not in the system. The others so far, Jake Barber won't talk to me. Lou Elizondo won't even answer my texts anymore. He just doesn't care. He just doesn't know. Yeah. They had a big convocation at Esalen with billionaires and I believe their friendly abductee when people like Gary Nolan and all sort of government connected hotties. Right. Not us. We were not invited. I wasn't, you weren't. None of the real experiencers who were out there doing this were invited.
But we were invited to something much more important.
Well, I don't care about that. What I care about is they are making a mistake.
I know they are.
Years ago, and this is one of the things I sort of half keep secret, but I've talked about this part of it before. I met one of the Nordic people face to face, or first on the phone. The important part was on the phone. On the phone, he told me that if you start a war with the Greys, They will never let you stop, and they will never let you win. And he sounded so sad when he said that. I thought to myself, maybe his people they're a voiced people like us, by the way, the Nordics.
Mhm.
And they don't work with the grace, and they don't like each other. So now you'll hear John Blitch on the show saying, we shoot them down. And I've learned from the Greys that that's okay, because we have to be able to have our own, we have to be able to defend ourselves. And what's going on, one of the psionics people says, well, we call them in and shoot them down. And, they don't understand what's going on. They're just not, they're not fully functional like we are. They're not in full communication. They're being trained. It's a training program. They're shooting down clay pigeons. It's a skeet shoot. It's not
Yeah.
that they're so stupid that they come in and we shoot them down. It's that they hear that call and know that there's somebody there waiting to shoot, and they come in, because we have to be able to defend ourselves as we are expressed out into the cosmos. We have to be able to. And because this is the physical part of this is going to go on for a while, it's not going to just disappear. Eventually, we end up in a situation where we don't have any access to bodies anymore, as we were saying earlier. But not now, not tomorrow, not next week, not maybe for 100 years or 1,000 years. And during this time, we become a cosmic species. We express ourselves into the cosmos, and we learn to communicate with all kinds of other species that are in the cosmos, and we get a big surprise about how to do it. We ain't going to be going out in rocket ships. Forget it.
No. Oh, no. It's primitive. I mean, Starship is a joke. It's a piece of antiquated junk that spits fire and pollutes our atmosphere. So
we need a
not
really,
good
really big giant dick with
Yeah.
shoot out. Those guys, I mean, they don't understand the symbolism of these huge rockets that they're firing off. I mean, I suspect they may all have tiny dicks. I'm not sure, but I don't know what's with it. But when I saw Jeff Bezos going up in his rocket,
Mhm.
I thought, my God, it's a flying penis. Look at it,
Yeah.
it's flying right up in
Yeah.
the sky. And he was
And
sitting in there with his bald head. It was hysterical.
they
Yeah,
just don't see it.
they
Whitley,
don't get it.
no, before we go, I wanted to slip this in, because as you were describing how you got your implant, it just gave me chills, because I know I told you about this before, but it must have been 20 years ago. It was back in the 90s. You remember Jilly used to do the Renaissance Fair, and
Yeah, I remember.
I would be left at the house by myself to watch the house and the dogs. Every weekend she went. She'd be gone for like 3 days. Saturday morning, I wake up, and she had gone out Friday night, and I get up, and I look out the window, and there's this car sitting outside, and there's two people sitting in it. And this is honest, absolutely the truth. And I said, that's odd, because I was a bit paranoid in those days, because there had been a lot of weird stuff going on, partly thanks to you, for what you tell me.
Yeah, I think thanks to you in your
They got out of
case.
the car. Okay. They got out of the car, and they started coming towards the house. And I said, they're coming here. Who are these? And they looked familiar. The lady was wearing a blue dress and had brunette hair, and the guy looked like David Jacobs. He was, he
I
had
remember Dave very fondly.
and um, mustache, gray hair, kind of frizzy. They came to the door and knocked on it. I opened the door up, and I looked at them, and I said, "Can I help you?" And I'm in a bathrobe, my pajamas. And I remember his exact words. He looked at me and he says, "Steve, you know who I am. You've read all my books." I did. And then they pushed their way in. They pushed in through the door. They put their hands on me, not violently or anything, but they did. And the minute they did, I was under their control. And they took me to the back, to my bedroom. They laid me down on my stomach. They pulled up my robe. And I felt these warm hands on my back. And I remember something about my ear. And I woke up. Next thing I knew, I woke up face down in the bed with my legs over the side, with a complete conscious memory of what I just told you. And ever since then, I've had that thing in my ear. And the night I was at Lee's, Carla's and Lee's, when you spoke that night, I told you about it again there, and you said you wanted to feel it, and you went to feel it, and it was gone.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
Mary and I are driving back. It's night. We're going up the one highway in the dark, and I feel this terrible burning and itching, and I go like this, and it's right back again.
That's interesting, because that's exactly when they attempted to take mine out. It went from here down into my earlobe.
You move.
And then 2 days later, it came back up again, and I felt that same burning sensation.
And I think it's organic.
I guess they wanted me to think, oh, his implants is imagination.
Yeah, that's it.
You're being tooled around by the unknown, even.
It's organic, I believe. I think it's grown. I don't think it's electronic or anything like that. It doesn't need to be.
Wait a minute, was it consensual? Did they introduce themselves or explain why they were there? Oh, no, not at all. I was reading, Deborah asked this question. I want to address it. I was reading, it was 11 o'clock at night, a May night. The windows were open in the bedroom, front windows on the driveway, back windows over the pool, the backyard. And I hear the crunching of gravel in the driveway. A concerning situation, because I don't see any car lights, and there's a big gate, and there is no way a car could get in there, but there's a car there, and it's got its lights off. I got a Benelli rat gun under the bed and a pistol in the bedside table. I'm going for the gun, and as I move, I hear a voice in the backyard say, "Condition red." And then we're not going for the gun. I'm going for the lights, the bank of switches that'll turn on floodlights all around the house.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see these people, man and woman, standing at the end of the bed. I go for the gun. The next thing I know, I'm lying on my side. I can't see anything. I'm wide awake. I can't move a muscle. I guess the man is pushing my head in waves down into the pillow.
Mm-hmm.
The woman is speaking to me very gently. And then they run off, and the next day, the day after, I feel the pain in my ear, and I realize it's there. And so, no, it wasn't consensual.
Well, somebody thought it was an important thing to do, and your description about how this doesn't necessarily have to do with the visitors, it has to do with the very thing that human beings have somehow managed to get themselves disconnected from. And I've always felt that this experience with the visitors wasn't so much about, spacecraft from other worlds with advanced beings in it, but something much bigger, something much more amazing than that. And they are so much in connection with that place we go.
It's about reconnecting the living and the dead. And
yes, that's what I'm trying to express. It's hard to.
I think the Greys might be a dead species. I think their entire expression into the physical world might be artificial. And as I said before, we're going down that road. We will go down that road. And maybe they've already gone down it.
Yes,
Maybe
I
it's
remember
actually
well.
an
One day
evolution.
you'll look like us.
Maybe an unvoiced species is that way because they've died into their physical lives are over, and they've evolved beyond the physical. And now they're penetrating into the physical to try to help us do the same thing.
Maybe.
They're midwives to the birth of mankind.
I just remember that one story in the communion letters, which, by the way, the first one Mary and I did together is this Saturday, where the little blue guy said, "One day, lady, you'll look just like us."
Yeah, that's Laurie Barnes, our dear friend and Anne's secretary for 10 years at least.
Yep.
And yeah, that was Laurie's extraordinary experience. She's lying in bed. She's pregnant. It's 1954, I think, or 52. And she's her husband's out on a gig. He works nights. He's a pianist. And she notices movement out of the corner of her eye, and she looks up, and there's this line of these little blue dwarfs at the bedside. And she's naturally horrified. And she recoils in horror. And the lead one says, "Do not be afraid. We're not here for you. We're interested in the girl child you're carrying," which did not calm her down at all.
No.
First of all, in the 50s, they didn't know whether a baby was going to be a boy or a girl until it came out.
Yeah,
and it
right.
turned out to be a girl. And I know her. I've met her a few times. She's a very sweet person. And there's no apparent reason they were interested in her, but they had their own reasons, I guess. Anyway, Laurie, he says, when Laurie continues to recoil, he says to her, "Why do you fear us?" And she says, "Because you're so ugly." And he puts his dark blue gloved hand on her wrist and he says, "My dear, one day you will look just like us." So Laurie passed away. And I have often wondered if she looks just like them now.
Yeah.
Or that we will all look like them one day. Maybe that is our future. Maybe they are human beings. Who knows what a butterfly looks like to a caterpillar?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? We think butterflies are beautiful and caterpillars are ugly. But caterpillars might kind of like other caterpillars, and they might think butterflies are pretty scary.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you get a chance to watch the Susan Alloway Jackrabbit case film that we did with her case? And so there's that part where she asked to touch one of the grays, and it says, "Well, sure." And so she touched it, and she went, "Ooh," and she recoiled, and she smelled her hand, and it smelled bad because of course they excrete their waste through their skin, as we know, and the gray reacted to that and said, "Why did you do that?" And she said, "Well, because you're so ugly," or something like that. And she said, the being said to her, "Well, you are me and I am you. We are all the same."
I think that sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it does.
Look, I had to quit. I think we're probably over time. I usually am.
That's okay.
You want me to tell one funny story before I go? One
Absolutely.
more?
Absolutely. You're not going to tell the one about the bank robbery, are you?
No, I have nothing to do with that.
And by the way, Mark Sims is listening to us while he drives somewhere far. And hello, Mark.
He's going down to Encinitas.
We love you.
Place. I love Encinitas. I love California, actually. I'm so glad I moved here from Texas when I did. Because Texas is drying out and everybody's extremely pissed off, and it turned into an extremely hostile environment. It was the most wonderful place in the world to grow up in when I was a boy. I got to grow up on ranches and out in the country, and in a wonderful little city of San Antonio. Now it's a great big overblown metropolis full of murder and death. And anyway, okay, here's a funny story.
Okay, tell
This
the
goes
funny
back
story.
to
We need to hear it.
what?
I said we need to hear a funny story.
Okay, well, this is a doozy. This goes back to probably about 1958. In those days, girls wore many petticoats under their skirts. And my sister was going out. She was just starting to date, and she was going out on a date. And it's probably like one of her first dates with a boy where so she was 16 and I would have been 13. And I had been collecting these beetles called June bugs, which are little beetles about this big, and they have kind of claws. They kind of hooked up a lot of hooks on their claws so they can hook on to things. And so as she's leaving, rushing out the front door, I take a handful of June bugs and stick them up under her skirts, and then pull my hand out, and all the June bugs are gone. They've gotten up into her petticoats. And I figure that my idea is that she's going to feel June bugs crawling around in her petticoats in the movies and go crazy in the movies, and it'll be really funny. And but they come back and they stop and park down at the end of our sidewalk, and there's a great big 70-foot tall ligustrum hedge overhanging the street there, and then the walk goes down, and you can barely see the car in there. And Daddy, of course, is going nuts, going from window to window and going, and Mother's saying, if you don't trust her, don't let her go out on dates. But you should trust her. She's a good girl. And all of a sudden, she bursts out screaming like a maniac. And he goes flying out the front door. The boy jumps out of the car and goes running up down the street with Daddy running up behind him. And Patricia's screaming and waving her arms in the car. I'm scared to death. I'm up in my bedroom. I didn't figure out what's going on. And then my mother gets her out of the car, and she's got her in the front yard. It's a windy night. She's clutching herself, and Mother's pulling off petticoats because of course they think there was a rape, of course. And all of a sudden there's petticoats blowing around the front yard, and all of a sudden I hear Mother yell out, "It wasn't him, Carl. She's got June bugs in her underpants." And I went and jumped on my bed and put my head in my pillow and laughed myself almost unconscious. And I thought, if they come up here and see me laughing, I'm in big trouble. But they didn't.
Oh, yeah.
My parents didn't figure it out. My sister never had any doubt at all that no matter what happened, it had to do with me.
I'm surprised you didn't yell out your name.
I hadn't been near her in hours. It was me. And so the next weekend, she has a slumber party. And they burst into my room. They turn off the intercom. We are upstairs, and my parents are off in a wing down in the bedroom far from us. We can't hear them. They can't hear us except with an intercom. The girls have turned off the intercom. They burst into my bedroom, de-pants me, which was horribly embarrassing, and get me into the bathtub, which they filled with ice and cold water, and hold me in this ice water bath. And I'm screaming and yelling and practically turning blue. And finally, they let me go, but they also locked me in the bathroom, because they've taken out the little hand key lock. So I can't get out of the bathroom until nearly dawn. Whoa. So I got paid back. I think it's a really funny story. Anyway, the moment when she said, Mother yells out, "It wasn't him, Carl. She's got June bugs in her underpants." Oh my, those days are gone. Where are we going, guys?
Where are we
going? All of us together on the spaceship Earth.
I don't know. I don't know. But I'm glad to be here despite everything. And every morning when I sit in the back or I sit at the table and I look out at the trees and the wind blowing through them and the sun, and watch all the birds and everything. I'm very glad to be here and very glad to be part of all of that at the very least.
Breaking the silence. You got the right idea. That's Annie's thing. Have joy.
That was Mary.
Have
I know
joy.
that's
And on
Annie's
that
thing.
note, maybe
I use it.
good night.
Yep.
I love you guys.
We love you, Whitley. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, you've been a friend a long time, Steve. Give Mary my love.
I will. She can hear you right now. And say hello to Mark Sims because he's listening.
Yeah. Hello, Mark Sims. When are we ever going to get together with what's his name? A lawyer with the big white head of hair.
Oh, that's Danny.
Danny Sheehan, yeah. I got a text from Danny the other day. Whitley, I'll call you in 10 minutes. That's the other day.
The other day, yeah. We met his son. He came to our house for dinner.
Mark. I've known Danny for zillions of years, since his hair actually was not white. And my hair wasn't either. But I didn't really get that gray, actually.
So you're going to have John on next week on Dreamland?
John
Blitch.
No, he's on now. He
is on now. Okay.
Yeah, if you go and listen to Dreamland
do you know that we know him?
Do I know John? Of course I know John.
No, that we know him. That he
you know John too.
Yeah, his boat is very near us, so he comes by once.
Oh yeah, he's a very special guy. He's not like the other people on the sort of the government connection. He's more open.
Yeah,
they're all sort of tight-assed and scared, and there's something wrong there. It's kind of creepy. But I hope they loosen up and become. I hope Jake Barber becomes willing to talk to the other close encounter witnesses like him.
I wish he would, because I saw that look on his face, and I know that look very well, and so do you.
Yeah,
it was astounding when he talked.
I know that look real well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He got right to my emotions right away.
Because I knew he was suffering a lot, and I know why. He needs us. He needs his family.
Yeah.
No one in the military is ever going to be his family like we can.
Nope.
Because they're all too serious. They're not like us.
You're getting lots of thank yous and
oh well, thank everybody too. All right, I swear to God, I'm going to go make myself
very much.
Goodbye.
Oh, that should be interesting. Get it on film. Bye. Love you, Whitley.
Bye. Love you too.
Bye.
Bye.